AOC on Pod Save America made her endorsement of Joe Biden's re-election bid official and formal. Pod Save tweeted out, AOC endorses Joe Biden for re-election, along with this video clip from their recent show.
So president's only primary opponents are Marianne Williamson and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Haven't been any rumors about anyone else even thinking about jumping in. Will you be supporting Joe Biden for re-election?
I believe given that field, yes. I think he's done quite well, given the limitations that we have. I do think that there are ebbs and flows, as there are in any presidency. There are areas that I think were quite strong when he came right out of the gate with the American Rescue Plan. And of course, the Inflation Reduction Act was a massive step in terms of our climate agenda. But, there are also areas that I think could have gone better. We have major structural issues in this country. And I think it starts with the United States Senate.
Okay. So it starts with the United States Senate. Okay. So now you see
conveniently,
how
the body that you're not in.
The body that you're not in, number one. But also, you notice how when Ayanna Pressley was confronted by our friend Colin Radix Carter about student debt, her first response was, first of all, we have to abolish the court, or not abolish the court, expand the court, right?
Right.
Okay, well, first of all, the way we have to deal with this is to take an action that we know will never be taken in the short term. So what is she saying now? She's saying, well, now there are these big structural impediments to the kind of change that we want to see. Number one being the United States Senate. Okay, so what are you suggesting? That we undo the United States Senate, or that we simply elect enough senators that are going to abolish the filibuster? That's what she gets to here.
I think that until we have senators that are willing to stand up and stare the filibuster in the eye and stare a lot of structural
or a president
in the United States Senate will be what holds back this country from an enormous amount of progress.
Right. Or
right.
a
the president that you're endorsing was against that and is against that. You're aware of that, right?
Right. He never came out in favor of abolishing that. So if it doesn't come from the president, you can't expect these moderate senators in swing states to actually go out and do it on their own. It's not like Joe Biden was begging Joe Manchin, please abolish the filibuster. He said, I'm not prepared to do that. That's the president who you just endorsed. Right. But she's saying, well, we have to get enough senators to abolish the filibuster. This is this major impediment to change. This is actually a variety very much of what Obama spoke a lot about during his presidency, but even more in his post-presidency. This idea that the barriers to progress are just too high and too strong for us to break through. Like we just can't get around it. And so the best you can do if you're Barack Obama is bear witness to the plight of the working people and bear witness to the suffering that you were empowered to somewhat improve, but couldn't do it. What you have to do is look it in the face, acknowledge it's here. Like you said, Russell, last year, I see the working people. I see, I feel you. Folks are struggling. He would say this from the Oval Office time after time after time.
Bill Clinton was the master.
People are getting frustrated. People are
I
hungry.
feel your pain.
Right. That's it. That's what politics is to people like this, is feeling your pain, empathizing, telling you they know how hard it is. But if you look at Obama speak now, even to this day, he talks about all these structural impediments to progressive change, as if he was not in a place to dismantle any of them. Which I would argue he could, but even if you couldn't, even if you felt you couldn't, it just shows the hollowness of all of the promises that he made, because he's a constitutional lawyer. If he understood going in that I can't do 90% of what I'm promising to do, then that was obviously just a giant con. And in the campaign books that have been written, Obama didn't like using the phrase, yes, we can hope and change. He thought they were silly. It was his campaign team that said, no, it's working, do it, because obviously it was working. Right. But this feels like that. That's what I remembered when I watched her talk about the Senate. It's like, don't you see, you're very, very clearly on the path. I mean, you're almost there already, but you're very, very clearly on the path to, not even in old age, when you're Obama's age, mid-50s, you're very, very much on the path to throwing your hands up and say, yeah, well, it's just impossible. It's just impossible. And that's the Obama ethos, and that's what any reasonable person would take from listening to him. That's what his staunchest defenders will often cite when you start critiquing his record. They'll say, well, he just had all these obstacles in his way.
Right. Of course.
Right? And that's what she's saying here.
Biden, not
he hasn't
least
done
of
great,
which
but he has all this in his way.
Well, and his race, of course.
Right.
Like,
Well, that too.
How could he possibly? I mean, that's what they'll fall back on always as a finally. Well, what could he possibly do? Which I always say, that is the worst. If you want to see more diverse representation, the worst argument you could possibly make is that if you elect diverse people, they're not effective. That's a terrible argument.
Right. They're forced to be ineffective. Right.
Right. Barbara Lee, still kicking, still holds her seat, and she voted the right way in a very difficult moment against the Afghanistan war. So
she was the only Democrat to publicly criticize Biden for sending these bombs to Ukraine.
Right, exactly. And last I heard, she was a black woman, and it seems like she can do that. So that's a bullshit argument. Obama entered office with a supermajority, the wind at his back. That it's absurd to say that he did not have the power. If anybody ever did, it was Obama. They're drawing little caricatures of him as FDR in the New York Times. He had everybody behind him. If he had locked up some bankers, he would have been a fucking legend.
Indeed.
I don't think Trump ever would have been president. If he
no, I don't think so either. No.
Yeah, what they don't understand, what they don't realize, what I think they're going to realize as I believe Cornel West numbers are going to hold up and possibly grow, and they're going to increasingly freak out. You cannot, for decade after decade, basically, you're running a company and you get everyone together in the lunchroom every day and you say, listen, guys, we do want to make working conditions better. But first, what you have to do is you have to do a triple axle on a soda can, and then you have to jump through a hoop, and then you have to run a triathlon, and then you have to come back around and break into the building, and then climb up a ladder, and then you're going to have better working conditions. Or, maybe not if you don't have a blowtorch. There is only so long you can tell people that before they say, fuck it. It's a failed system. It doesn't work. Like, what you're telling me is not an actionable plan. It's not something that's actually going to improve our lives. You're just telling me a lot of bullshit about all of these steps I have to take that are untakeable, that probably will never happen, in order to placate the workers, in order to placate the people. How long did you think you could feed them this line of horse shit before all but the small and shrinking number of people who are doing well in this system decide, you know what? It's a failed system. I want to just burn it all down. How long did you think you could get away with it? You got away with it longer than one would think. Although if you look at the history of revolutions, that's what always strikes one, that people have to be pretty put upon before they decide they're going to overthrow the system, right? I mean, things have to be pretty bad. They have to really be starving. They really have to be bringing currency to the store in a wheelbarrow before they really revolt.
Right.
We're getting there. Maybe we are there. I mean, right now it's in the form of a third-party candidacy that they are going to. We already see them. We're covering it tonight. I mean, they're going out of their minds. Everything she said here, this might have kept people at bay 10 years ago. Now it just sounds like nonsense. It's just nonsense. I think most people hear that. They hear nonsense. It makes you tired, right? When you hear this kind of talk. Oh, we got to do the thing with the Senate and this and that. It's Lieberman or it's Manchin. It's always fucking something. It's Thomas. It's okay. So you're describing a failed system.
Right.
You're basically admitting the system
that's not worth
work.
investing in. Certainly not worth doubling down on the guy overseeing that right now, overseeing a worsening of conditions for the kinds of people who you were elected to represent. We talked about Cornel West running third party. This really, I mean, the final nail in the Marianne Williamson campaign has already been, set in there for a while. But you see this happen. This is what a lot of people who held out hope for a Democratic Party challenge were expecting might not happen. Like, they were not counting on AOC backing Biden. They thought in their mind...
Who thought that?
They thought in their mind, well, what if some of these, young progressive squad members or Bernie, what if they defy the party and they back a Marianne or they back an RFK? Exactly. I could see maybe being under that illusion if this were the 2020 campaign and you had an incumbent Democrat, right? Let's say Clinton won in 2016 and then AOC and Ilhan Omar, they got elected in 2018 back when they were still, young and had a little bit of fire. And I could see maybe holding out some hope that they might buck the party and go with a primary challenger. Even then, it would be unlikely. But okay, maybe. At this point, AOC's been there for 6 years. If you didn't see this coming, then you weren't paying very much attention, which is kind of mind-blowing considering that a lot of people who were pushing and inside the Democratic Party route had to be thinking, well, it's going to take momentum like this. It's going to take some big moves being made by some people who are already there. What if AOC throws her weight behind a primary challenger or Bernie? They were not going to do that. Right. They're Democrats at the end of the day. They function as Democrats. They're not going to back a primary challenger because of where they are. There's an incumbent president. There's the old saying, right? You take a shot at the king, you better not miss, right? Because then you're in real hot water.
Right.
So if they back one of these long shot primary challengers and those primary challengers lose, as they almost certainly will, even with AOC or Bernie's backing, then what happens after they lose? Well, now forget it. Now you're on the shit list. Now the king knows you came after him, right?
Right.
So what do you got? I mean, this is very, very 101 stuff. This is how the game is played at this level. It's very, very easy to see this coming, which is why I was honestly surprised at how much attention this video clip got, because this was all over Twitter when it happened. And there was no reason to be surprised over it. There really wasn't.
That's what I said. When Keaton told me we were doing this, I said, why? I thought she endorsed him months ago. I honestly did. I just kind of assumed that she had, like around the time Bernie had. It was just such a foregone conclusion to me that it wasn't even on my radar. And he was like, no, people are talking about this. I'm like, why? I don't even understand what the story is. Why would anyone even, she made it very clear where she stands, way back on the highway. Like, who expected anything other than her to endorse Joe Biden? Who are these people? Who thought this was a surprise decision?
Please clap.